Welcome to another episode of Parenthood Lifestyle with Dunia, Tozy, and today we're joined by the lovely Andrea Scott, who's one of the co-founders of SKOAH, and she's also the CEO. Thank you so much for joining us. So you guys started in 2001, and you've come so far during that time. So tell me a little bit about how did it all come about? Like, why did you get into the beauty industry?
We really weren't looking to get into the beauty industry. It was more about finding something in health and wellness. And realized after looking around a little bit that there was a really underserved need in the spa industry. So what we observed early on was that spas were not really focused on that young urban working professional, so the moms, the people that had full-time jobs. Spas were very much for people that had a lot of time and a lot of money, and that doesn't typically hit that 25 to 45-year-old market. And what we also noticed was that when we interviewed several women early on, what they told us was that they would go to spas more often if it didn't take up so much time in their day, and if it felt a little bit more for them. And so when we went and explored the spas in Vancouver, while they were lovely and we had great experiences, they weren't really for the younger market. The design, the attitude, the atmosphere, it was very focused on kind of the diva for the day. And a lot of women that are, well, I'm at the tail end of that age bracket now, but a lot of women don't want that. They want something a bit more minimal. They want the music that they would listen to at home, and they want to feel very comfortable. It can be a really intimidating experience,
so true,
and we really wanted people to feel like when they walked in the door, this was a place for them. And so it was really some of those really simple tweaks early on, the music, the design, the atmosphere, and the first tagline was no whale music, no bubbling cherubs, and no pretentious attitudes. So right away you kind of break those barriers down.
Right. So what made it so different from the rest? I mean, you mentioned a few things, but why did people gravitate towards coming to SKOAH?
Well, and that's actually a really good point, because early on there wasn't a lot of differentiation between what we did and what everybody else did aside from the attitude and atmosphere. And so as much as the tagline got people smiling, we realized that there needed to be something a bit more distinct, because that wasn't something that couldn't easily be replicated. And so we started to explore what was happening in some of the bigger cities around the world, and we observed that the single service concepts were starting to break off. Really the only one that had broken off were the nail bars. And we went back to Vancouver and looked at the sort of services that we offered, and we spoke with our estheticians and asked them, what do you love to do? And it was pretty unanimous that facials were very special. And what we loved about facials was there's such an opportunity to build that ongoing relationship with the guest. And it's very much about problem solving. It's very much about relaxation. And at the same time, we were also ready to launch a product line. So it all fell together pretty naturally. And we launched as a single service concept with a 5 SKU product line in 2003, which is not a lot. But our plan, which was quite interesting for our customers to experience, was that we would use the products we were thinking of making in the facials and then get that feedback from them and grow the product line organically. But in 2003, you have to remember that we were 5 to 7 years away from a blow-dry bar or a massage-only place, or even a nail bar wasn't something that was that typical in the city. So people just didn't get it right away. They were so confused about why we would do that. Why would you just take everything off the menu and focus on a single service? But we felt so confident that we could do this and that we could do something really, really different in this industry. And it was a lot of work. But, we persevered and ended up creating what SKOAH is today. And now we have over 70 different products. We've been featured for Best Place for a Facial in Allure magazine. InStyles cited us in their Best Place for Facial lists in their little black books that they sometimes do. And I think we've really stood out as a place where you're going to get a far better facial experience by going to see an expert.
And you do all of this while having 4 children. Wow, how do you manage it all? And tell us a little bit about your kids.
So I have 3 boys and 1 very bold daughter. So my kids are amazing. I think they've very much, through the experience of having entrepreneurial parents, they've learned that flexibility and resiliency is just a part of life. And so they're very used to being dragged down to one of the stores to shut the alarm off or to do a load of laundry in the early days, to now where it's, you know, we've got locations in lots of different cities. I'll take them all 4 down to Seattle with me because I've got to work on the weekend. And, you know, we'll mix in some fun, but I think that they understand that this is just a part of life. So yeah, my oldest is 11. He just turned 11 about a month ago. My second son is 9. My daughter will be 7 in July. And then I have a 5-year-old who just turned 5, just finished kindergarten. So yeah, but you know, I mean, that's kind of what life is all about. And I think you make time for the things that you want to make time for in life. And sometimes it is just messy. And other times it kind of flows.
But how hard was it at the starting stages, you know, at the beginning when you guys were growing, having young kids and being an entrepreneur at the same time?
I mean, I think it was really tough early on because, of course, when you're building a business and you're investing and reinvesting all of your cash flows back into the business, you don't have a lot left over. And so the things that you kind of take for granted now, like I have a full-time nanny who is like saves me. I couldn't do what I do without her. But in the early days, it's really difficult to afford that. And so you piece it together the best way you can. And I had a combination of family and nanny and, you know, their dad and I would trade off. And I think that worked somewhat reasonably well. But as we grew, that just became an impossibility because your time is just too tight. So, you know, I think some days are just really, really tough. But now it's a lot easier when I look at what I can do now and the fact that they're in school almost all now full time. That's a game changer for sure.
But I'm sure you are an inspiration for your kids, you know, having a mom who's doing it all and taking care of them. And I'm sure for your 7-year-old girl as well, like do they talk about maybe following in your footsteps at all?
Well, you know, I mean, that's an interesting one because I think kids often feel that we're not there even when we are there. And so sometimes we have that conversation where they'll say, well, how come you aren't there every day at pickup and drop off? And so what I always talk to them about is what makes us as a family happy and what makes me happy. And I make sure I do let them know that I actually really like working and that it is a choice I made. And it is. I mean, everything we do is a choice. And even if you don't have to work, that's still a choice to choose not to if you have that option.
Exactly.
But for me, I really love what I do, and it's a part of my life, and it's I guess to some extent now, it's almost a part of who I am, and it's all very interconnected. So I think the kids just know that at times the phone's going to ring, or at night I'm going to have to use my computer and do some work, and you know, for me, it doesn't always feel like work, so I will have that conversation with a lot of friends who are like, you do too much, you're working too many hours, but for me, at the end of the day, once I've got my kids to bed and I've got my nice glass of red wine, then I can actually just work at my own pace and kind of get back to people on things. And, you know, one of my values is to make time for people versus things. And so that, if I really want to hold myself accountable to those values, it means that I do have to make time for people in the day. And those things can get done at night when it's just me by myself in my kitchen, drinking wine.
So true.
Working.
So what's so rewarding about doing all this? And you guys have come so far in this journey. Why do you still love doing this?
I'm a creator. I love creating things that people can experience, and I love creating experiences. And it's not even about the experience of having a facial. That's a part of it. But when someone comes in the store, I feel so happy about the fact that when they leave, they're leaving happier than when they came in, or when they use one of our products at home and they see a change in their skin. That does help us with our feelings about ourselves, and it's such a simple thing. So I really like that, and I think, you know, creating an experience in people's lives that didn't exist before, that's what great brands do. I mean, a lot of our customers, they're not spa people. They go to SKOAH to get their facials, but they tell us, oh, I'm not a spa person. In fact, they would almost be offended by that. So this is something new in their life that didn't exist before that gives them that kind of wonderful feeling. And I think that that's a really, really incredible opportunity to be able to do that on a daily basis. So I love that. I also really love to see people come in and start working with us and then just grow and grow and grow and grow. I love to create the opportunity for that. And now that we're franchising, I think what I am loving more than anything in the 17 years that we've been in business is actually creating entrepreneurs. So most of our franchisees are are women at this stage. I mean, we do still have some great men in the system as well, but you know, they weren't entrepreneurs before. And so many of us are really kind of mesmerized by that opportunity of entrepreneurship, but yet we don't really know where to start.
That's so true.
And so what I love is that really I just give you a system to follow. Like there's processes and training and the business itself, but it's really up to the entrepreneur or the franchisee to leverage that in their community and really own that. And they really are. It's their business. And so I guess that mentorship is really enjoyable for me.
Speaking of mentorship, for those people who want to get into this, what is your advice, especially parents, you know, who want to get into this and, you know, they're afraid because maybe they're afraid they don't have enough time, maybe they work a part-time job or something like that. What's your advice?
Okay, I get a lot. So another value of mine is keep moving forward, and that really translates into lots of different aspects of my life, but in terms of business, you have to keep moving forward. I see it so many times where there's analysis paralysis. So people are trying to gather more information and data and information, and they're not quite ready. They want
it to be perfect, right?
Yeah. And you know, you just can't do that in this period of time where things are changing and evolving so quickly. So you have to figure out if you're going to dive in or not, and if you have the stomach to dive in or not. And you have to know that you are going to seriously screw up. There's going to be so many things you do wrong, and you have to accept that. Most of my really close friends are entrepreneurs because we have that sounding board with one another, because it's a lonely place to be. The Forum for Women Entrepreneurs, I cannot say enough good things about. An incredible organization. Even if you're thinking about starting something, go and become a member and surround yourself with entrepreneurs. Take one of their courses, do one of their programs, because it just gets those juices flowing, and you never know where an idea is going to come from, or you might find someone looking for a co-founder, and that might be the opportunity. I also think have an open mind to what your business could be. If you don't have an idea, just have an open mind and start to look around at what's not being served in your community. And I think the other part is to just let go of things that aren't working. Businesses evolve. My business is entirely different than when it started. We had no product line. We were a full-service spa with very little distinction between us and another, aside from the attitude and atmosphere. And so you have to just let go of things that you know are not working or that you could do better. So it was tricky in our case because actually things were working quite well. And we took an axe to it and took a risk and said, no, we're going to go forward and just do this. But I think if you can't take a risk and you can't let go, then it's going to be really difficult to create a business that's sustainable.
And you guys have come so far, you know, in 17 years. Where do you see yourself going from here?
Well, it sounds really audacious, but our goal is to reach 250 locations in the next 5 years. But that's really what franchising is all about. It's exponential. So the more great leaders that you have in the community that are growing the brand, the more they attract other people that want to do the same. And so, you know, in some ways I look at that number and think, well, maybe that's a bit small, because I look at the people that have gone before me that have created these great brands. A great role model for me is a woman named Anna Phillips from the Lash Lounge. She's based in Texas. I mean, I think she opened 65 stores in the past 18 months. And that takes a team of people, and she's got obviously a great team, but that exponential growth, it really can start to steamroll, but it's really critical to pick the right people early on that are going to be those great franchisees to help create what the system will be.
And you're helping them to become entrepreneurs themselves as
well,
right?
Yeah.
That sounds awesome. That's incredible. I can't believe 250. Thank you so much for being here, Andrea. Thank you. And if people want to know more about your products, where can they go?
So SKOAH.com is the website that will tell you all about the products. We do have a second website for the franchise company, which lots of people like to spend some time exploring, even if it's just for enjoyment, to fantasize about being an entrepreneur, and that's SKOAHfranchise.com.
That's awesome. Thanks again so much. And thank you to everyone who's watched us. Make sure that you subscribe and check us out on social media at Parenthood Lifestyle. Thanks again, and see you next time.